Hi, you're welcome to today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman. My name is Fagbeja, and today I'll be reading Susan's story. We find love in the most unlikely places, and this is my story. I don't know if it is inspirational, but it is definitely unusual, and that is why I have chosen to share it. When I was growing up, I always disliked the idea of people being mocked or bullied. I guess some will say that my empathy level is high. If there was someone in my school or class being ostracized, I would definitely try and make friends with that person, just so that they would not feel alone. I challenged people when they made fun of others and did all I could to include everyone around me, except they wished to be excluded. Fortunately for me, I come from an affluent background and people seemed to flock around me because of this. And whenever they got close, I used it as an opportunity to influence them against being snobbish. Even my family thought I could be a bit too friendly, but it was who I was, and so they left me to myself. When I met Lawrence during our NYSC camp, it was from this perspective that we became friends. He had cerebral palsy at birth, which had left one leg and one arm disabled. He could walk, but he dragged one leg and one arm was paralyzed completely. He was quite self-conscious about his disability, which made him timid. But once I got to know him, he was extremely chatty and friendly. He was very interesting and had many stories to tell about himself and about life generally. It was not long before we became very good friends and eventually started dating after we finished our service year. He was from an average middle-class background. He was a lab scientist who graduated with a second-class upper honors, and right after our youth service, he got a job with a big pharmaceutical company. Knowing my family, I was sure it was going to be an uphill task to convince them to accept him, but I wasn't daunted. I loved him, and that was all that mattered to me. After we had been dating for over a year, we started to talk about taking things further. I had never mentioned him to my family, even though we were close-knit. My two sisters could not keep secrets, and I was not ready to discuss matters with my parents yet, especially my mom, who was quite snooty. I knew it would be hard for her to deal with this. I had met his parents and siblings, a lovely family, and when he pressed about meeting mine, I told him that I needed us to be sure about where our relationship was headed before I introduced him, because my family was a lot more formal than his. I had never introduced any male friends to them officially, so when I did, they would know it was serious. I left out the part about their being snobbish, because I knew it would affect his confidence. He was worried that I was embarrassed about him, but I managed to reassure him that that wasn't the case. One day, I finally summoned the courage to announce to my family while we had dinner that I was in a relationship and we were serious. My older and younger sisters were visibly shocked because we didn't hide such things from each other. Immediately, the questions started pouring out. I told them everything about Lawrence, but left out the part that he was disabled. It was a Wednesday, and I agreed to bring him home on Saturday afternoon. Even though it's been 6 years, I remember everything like it was yesterday. On Friday night, I barely slept. I felt excitement and apprehension at the same time. On Saturday, I left home to pick him up, and when we arrived a few minutes after 4, I ushered him into the sitting room and went to call my parents. By the time I got back 10 minutes later, my younger sister was chatting with him like an old friend. My older sister waited in the kitchen and summoned me immediately. "What on earth are you doing, Susan?" were her words to me. I gave her a defiant look. Just then, my younger sister called me that my parents were downstairs. He stood up to greet my parents so they could see him fully. He was still standing when I walked in. My mom shot me a glance, but apart from that, my parents both kept normal faces and made small talk with Lawrence. We all had lunch and then he left in a cab. All hell was let loose after Lawrence left. My father did not say a word, but my mom got on my case immediately. Susan, you can't be serious. There is no way you are marrying a cripple. I insisted he wasn't crippled. My older sister took sides with my mom. My dad still refused to say anything, while my younger sister found it all amusing. She kept saying, Susan, why do you always have to be different? She liked Lawrence, but she said I did not have to cause trouble. The weeks after that were tough. I had to let Lawrence in on what was going on, but I assured him that it was my battle and I would fight it. The issue was really between my mom and I. Eventually, my dad urged me to be reasonable and listen to my mom because she wanted the best for me, but he refused to give his opinion. A year after, I still could not convince my parents, and so Lawrence and I decided to go ahead with a court wedding. My father and sisters were happy with the fact that it was a quiet ceremony, but my mom did not attend. Many waters have passed under the bridge over the last 5 years since we got married, but we have had a wonderful time. We have 2 children now, and my mom has finally come around. She loves her grandchildren to pieces and she visits them often. At first, it was hard for me to forgive her for not attending my wedding, but we eventually had a proper family introduction and traditional wedding. Though still quiet, my mom played the perfect hostess. My dad likes Lawrence a lot because of his intelligence. None of my sisters is married yet, so this is the only son-in-law they both have. Even though it took a while and a lot of difficulties, I'm happy I stood my ground and got married to the man I love. What lessons did you learn from Susan's story? Please share in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next story.